It's the Rangers Journal night.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rangers Journal. It's a Thursday evening, and we are here with another Q&A of yours choice. Just going to go through answering any questions you guys might have about any recent news or any of the manager videos that have been getting pumped out at a fair pace by the man of the hour, Scotty. Got a great panel this evening to go through everything that we're going to go through. Starting off to my right or my left? I can't remember which way it'll be on the actual video side. But Ryan, evening, how you getting on?
How are we getting on, buddy? Everything okay?
Yeah, it's not too bad, not too bad. Yourself?
Right. Everything's fine, mate. Glad it's Friday tomorrow.
Good. And directly beneath me, something I thought I'd never say, is handsome man of the pod, Dino.
All right, mate. How you doing?
I'm not too bad. How about yourself?
Yeah, brilliant, mate. Thanks very much.
Good stuff. And of course, not by no means last or least, we've got Stevie joining us as well. How you getting on, mate?
Evening, Doug. Evening, Ryan and Dino and everybody. I'm good, mate. Thank you.
Great stuff. So for anyone watching this evening, if as I say, doing a Q&A session tonight, so if you do have any questions about anything at all related to Rangers, obviously we've got lots of hypotheticals and postulations, ideas and theories, conspiracies and otherwise right now with the takeover imminent, providing questions on absolutely everything to do with the club, the number one being the manager at the moment. So as I say, I've got a couple of starter questions for the guys, and hopefully if those watching get any questions in, then as I say, I will be stockpiling them to start asking as we get a few on the board. The guys, as I say, I've got a couple of things I've picked up from the latest news at the moment to ask you upon. So the first sort of news that came out, I think, this morning was in regards to Rabbi Matondo. Rabbi Matondo has been obviously on loan at Hannover 69 in Germany. Not really had the greatest time of it. He's only, I think, made one or two starts in total, played around 10 games. I think sort of semi-famously scored in his first game for them, much to the amusement of Rangers fans everywhere. But perhaps inevitably that was his one and only goal for Hanover. They've just sacked their manager, and they're not sure which direction I think that they're going. And they've basically come out and said that they're doing, I think what everyone wishes we were doing, is that they're only going to be playing players that they have contractual futures involved with, and that they see a future in. And thusly, they've basically said all loan players will not be involved and will be going back to their parent clubs. So that means that Rabbi will be coming back to us in the summer. So simple question involving him. I don't know if anyone's paid much attention to his time away. And I'm pretty certain I know how this answer will go for all three of you. But I'll ask the question nonetheless, starting with you, Ryan. Rabbi Matondo, is he one for next season or is he one to get punted ASAP?
Sell him now. Punt, ASAP, free of charge, get him off the wages now.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and what about yourself, Dino?
He's just got to be released for his contract. I'd be surprised if we get any money for him, to be quite honest with you, given the wages that he's on. But I just cut our losses. Simple as that.
Yep, and finally, Stevie Matondo, we did bring him in for, I think it was about 3.5 million we paid for him. I doubt we'll get, as Dino said, we're going to be getting much of that back. Maybe somewhere in the 3 or 6 figures, possibly maybe pushing $1 million if we're really lucky. But, you know, the wages are a hurdle. However, it seems that the majority of clubs that are kind of interested in, because there is, believe it or not, still interest in Rabbi Matondo from areas of the Championship and League One. So perhaps, you know, the wages are not maybe as big of a stumble for some Championship clubs, and that I think maybe might be where he goes. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. You look at some of the players that never cut it, like Kieran Dill, he's doing quite well at Birmingham. So yeah, I think definitely Championship level, yeah, you can definitely get a move there. But I totally agree with Dino and Ryan. He's just, I said before, he's like a speedboat without a driver. He's got all the pace, but he's his goal against them was amazing, but other than that, he's not consistent and he's far too injury prone. He's not what Rangers need, so wish him all the best, but he'll be away in the summer, I've no doubts.
Absolutely. Good thing you mentioned Birmingham. Actually, what we should do is put him as a a contractual clause in their deal for either Davies or Dowell. I'll just say we'll absolutely sell you Dowell, but you have to take him too. We'll do it that way, but that's fine. Welcome to the guys in the chat. We're starting to see the chat filling up with some comments there. As I say, guys, we are doing Q&A tonight, so if you've got any questions, please throw them in, and I will start stockpiling them for the guys. The other thing that came out, or was just sort of floating about the news today, was comments being made that Rangers should sign Penrice from Hearts, the left back. He is a player I think we've touched on in pods before. It's been talked about that he's potentially something to sign. I've seen sort of mixed views on Penrice. There are a lot of people that are a fan, some people less so. I think Penrice is a decent player. He's got, I believe, 6 goal involvements this season, 2 goals, 4 assists, which is decent enough for our left back. If you compare that, say, for example, to our own, I think both of ours are stuck on 3 or 2 and 3. And if you want to compare that to the Champions team's left back, he's on 7 goal involvements, all assists. So when you compare that to 7 goal involvements for a team who've comfortably won the league, and he's got 6 in a team that are currently still not totally out of the relegation battle yet, I think that's a good return. And I definitely think he could come in and fight for that place, considering the players we've got at the moment. What's your thoughts on Penrice, Ryan?
Yeah, I've not seen enough of him to make a definite comment, yes or no. There's obviously concerns that he's part of a defence that have seen Hearts obviously fall into the bottom 6 and get their manager relegated. So, no smoke without fire there on that side of things. Do we need him? Is he any better than Robbie Fraser? Because I think his Penrice not about 26 or 27 as well.
So, about 26.
Yeah, so he's, if we were going to sign him, he should have been with us a few years ago if he had the potential to be there. So there's not going to be any kind of sell-on value. There's not really any kind of player development now either. He's too old to probably pick up any kind of new talent. He's not going to pick up any kind of transfer side of things. He would become the 4th left back in the building, assuming that we keep a hold of Jeffy, Ridvan, and Robbie Fraser coming back as well. So if we were in the market for a Scottish left back, I'd like to see us push the boat out and go for Josh Doig. Is the one I would like to go for, which I think we were quite heavily linked with him last summer, but obviously financial constraints, it never happened.
Yep. Stevie, what about yourself? Your thoughts on Penrice or the alternate given by Ryan there? He's touched on, yes, Scottish, which is a plus for us. I think we do need a couple more Scottish players in. 26, so he should, in theory, be at his prime. One thing I would say maybe about in terms of learning new skills, not so much learning new skills, but I do believe that players have the ability to get better by virtue of being in better teams and having better players around them. So maybe he can lift his levels in that way. But what's your thoughts?
I get what you're saying. There's no doubt about that. But for me, I'd far rather see Fraser given a proper run. He's a guy who really can improve with time and opportunity. And I think if you look at Leeds, they're kind of becoming renowned for getting like really young guys, like 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, a shout in the first team. And he's older than that. He's a lot of talent. So, yeah, to me, I'd far rather see just, our own product and giving an actual proper run at it and let him develop over time, because Jeffy and Ridvan, neither are really convincing. They've both got different attributes, but I don't know if they're two, in my opinion, they're two that could easily go in the summer. And I probably wouldn't be too disappointed to see the back of them. So we are going to need a new left back, I suspect. But I'd be keeping Fraser and looking at maybe somebody a bit more higher quality, like Ryan suggested, Doigley. That would be a great shout. But yeah, somebody that'll aim higher than the Hearts left back.
And what about yourself, Dino? Are you on Team Fraser, or do you want to see perhaps him as a backup and bringing in someone like as high quality as possible, or what's your thoughts?
No, I'd be getting rid of Ridvan and Jeffy in a heartbeat. Jeffy for me is just a massive liability defensively. We've all played football to some level, and switching off is basic schoolboy stuff. And this narrative that you can get that coached into him, he's in his 20s. I'm sorry, but that's no stuff like that. That's just the basics of football. You've either got it or you've not, and he doesn't. And I'm still have nightmares when we played Queen's Park. You know what I mean? So, and Ridvan's made of polystyrene, so he's just got to go in the summer And Robbie Fraser is there. I've never seen anything that would make me think that he's not able to come in and do a job. And I saying a top quality left back, if we could get Josh Doig, that'd be some coup. Really would. But that's the kind of calibre of player that we've got to be looking at to improve our starting 11.
Absolutely. Well, we're going for the highest quality that we can potentially afford. So, good points there all round, I think. I'm starting to get a couple of questions in from the comments. As I say, I'm sort of ticking them off and stockpiling a few to go through. So keep them coming in, guys, and we shall get to them in just a minute. So as I mentioned at the sort of the top of the show there, one of the things we've been doing in kind of the closed season is looking at new management possibilities. The gaffer Scotty has been churning out these videos at quite the rate, and he's got plenty more that will be coming out in the next days as well, guys. One of the most recent ones that came out was the Kevin Muscat video. So the series, if you haven't seen it yet, it's called the Brown Brogues Who's Next, as to who will be the next Rangers manager, looking into doing deep dives with experts from the areas that these managers are working in, that know the teams that they've worked with, so we can get an insight into who these guys are, a bit more than just the odds beside the names. So do go and check these videos out. They're really good. As I say, Scotty's doing a power of work there, so do check them out. Guys, I don't know about yourselves. I watched the Kevin Muscat one earlier on today. There's a couple of points I've picked out that I thought would be good to make good questions this evening. So just checking my notes here. So one of the things that the chaplain that interviewed mentioned was that Muscat's got a really good footballing brain. I think a lot of people have a sort of an image of him in terms of the player and who he was as a player. And one thing that really came across in the interview, that he's kind of the opposite as a manager. He's very thoughtful. He's very his man management's very good in terms of he's quite a caring manager. And he described him as being having a really good footballing brain. How key do you think that is going to be, Ryan? Starting with you, for our next manager, who's going to be able to, finally get this conundrum of, being able to perform in Europe, but also have tactics that will perform domestically?
Yeah, we've got to get away from this kind of one-trick pony that we've had before. That you've seen under Warburton that there was just one style, and if it didn't work, it was like for like substitutions. You've seen it before with Gerrard, that it was cross after cross after cross into the box. So you actually got to a situation where teams were just willing to give up the wide areas against us because they knew that the crosses were just coming in, they would be able to defend against them. Clement was guilty of one-trick pony, not be able to do it. So you need to be able to develop. You got to understand that we're not the greatest team in Europe. So when we're going away to really tough grounds, we've got to be able to adapt and change and come up with the answers to the questions that we're going to get asked. But you also need to understand as well that we are one of two of the best teams in the country, and we are going to come up against situations where it will be part of the bus and 10 men. But so we need to answer those questions as well. So you need to have somebody with they're versatile, and they can come up with ideas in different situations. But whoever they are, they're going to need to be back financially, because there has to be a plan B. But to be a plan B, there's got to be options on the bench. So you've got to have a wee striker, you've got to have a big striker, you've got to have a fast striker. So there's got to be various different options to be able to unlock the key to the door when they come against these things. But footballing wise, that all starts with the manager. He's the guy that picks the team and puts the guys on the park and gives the instructions out. The players come secondary to that.
Absolutely. Coming around to yourself, Stevie, if there's anything you want to add to what Ryan said there, but also the question I want to put to yourself, I don't know. Well, I'm assuming most people know that Kevin Muscat and Ange Postecoglou have worked together and have worked at opposing teams, and careers mirrored themselves ever so slightly team-wise. So they're guys that are known to one another, and Muscat's known to have been influenced by Ange Postecoglou in terms of his style of play, that kind of a fast attacking play that Postecoglou is obviously very known for, having brought that over here, while having a bit more aggression in his teams, I think, and while still being practical enough to change that, which is one thing that I think could be a key for him, because as we've seen in terms of what Postecoglou has done moving forward, I don't think he's as pragmatic as he needs to be, as he's found out in the Premiership. For you, I think there's a lot of fans who maybe they don't know Muscat as much, and they're basically looking at him and going, I just want because they think he's just going to come in and basically do for us what Ange does to Celtic, did for Celtic. When it comes to yourself, first, are you pro Muscat in general? And do you think there's anything particularly he has that's different to Ange that he could bring to Rangers if he was the next manager?
Yeah, I would be delighted to see him be the new Rangers manager. I think he ticks a lot of the boxes. The key word that you used there is pragmatic. He is more pragmatic than Postecoglou. But the fact that he's Australians are brilliant competitors. We do know if his playing career, he was hard as nails. He's got a bit of metal about him, and you need that. If you're going to be Rangers manager, you need to have that kind of mental toughness. So he's got that. But he's also a good coach, and he's proven it. So I think there's a lot of kind of factors that make him a really attractive, Rangers manager. I think he really would hit the ground running, and I think he would embrace the challenge. Ryan's saying there's obviously you need this, you need that, and you do. But Rangers need a manager with balls. Like, they need somebody who's brave, who's not actually afraid to fail. Clement was paralysed with fear, and he wouldn't change it. He was so scared, and you could see it. He was shut down. And to be fair to Barry Ferguson, he's tried to change it, but he's not got the the coaching background and the success that these other guys we're looking at have got. So I think that is key. But yeah, just his overall kind of manner as a manager, I think it's really impressive. I was kind of disappointed that we never got him when Clement came in. I would have preferred it then, to be fair, but at the same time, maybe that was for the best, because he would have gone through the same kind of cuts that Clement suffered, and he might have been looked at in a different light. So maybe this is like he was the right guy, but now's the right time, if that makes sense. So maybe things have kind of fallen into place at exactly the right time for him, hopefully.
That would be good, yep. And for yourself, Dino, they talked about, as touching there on his tactics, they talked about him being adaptable, as they've been aggressive and bringing attractive and attacking football. And I think that's something a lot of fans are really keen to have. The football's kind of drifted in and out of being like really good in Europe, but then absolutely horrendous domestically. And the thing that really gets me is how slow we often play domestically. While I think, the obvious answer to the question, do you want to see great attacking football? The answer to that is yes. But how do you balance that between, winning and the style of football? I think we've seen in the past sometimes that West Ham comes to mind as a good recent example of a team that were playing well at periods of time in terms of they were getting results, but the football was awful and the fans basically chased out a relatively successful manager David Moyes, largely seemingly because they didn't like the type of football he played, despite the fact he won them a European trophy. How does that sit with you in terms of, obviously we're a club that demands success, but we also want to see good football. So, where do you draw the line in terms of that balance of the football being good and how long it takes to get to a winning position?
First and foremost, we need to be teams need to be frightened of us again. Simple as that. Domestically, teams see that they're playing us, they're rubbing their hands. That needs to change. So first and foremost, that's the number one priority for me. Then after that, it comes the type of football that we're playing. Also, another manager coming in, wanting his style, wanting his players. That's not going to happen overnight. But what can happen overnight is exactly what Gerrard done. It's if you cash it, minds back to 2018, we were getting pumped left, right and centre domestically. Gerrard comes in and changes that right away. I mean, we didn't have the basely players at that time, but he changed how we played and how we set up and how we went against each other teams, showed them the disrespect that they show us. That's what they need to realise that it's Rangers, simple as that. And then after that, then let's adapt this attacking, fluid football that we all want to see, that we could actually win silverware domestically, and then in the chance that we're still representing ourselves with our heads held high in Europe and perhaps getting to latter stages here and there. That to me, that's the be all and end all of being a Rangers fan. I'd love to see us win European trophies, but let's be honest, we're not that good enough. But however, we are good enough to be winning consistently domestically, and we're a big enough club to attract the right manager, to attract the right players that want to come here. And at the end of the day, if you've got the mentality, you can succeed at this football club. Past examples, Kirk Broadfoot, mediocre at best football player, but he was relatively successful at our club.
Yeah, he embraced
You
the
know,
culture.
so-
He bought into it. That's it.
Exactly, and that's exactly the culture needs to be brought back, and yeah, that's what's most important for me.
I think you raised a really interesting point there at the end, actually, about that. You know, well, maybe saying average players is unfair, but those players that maybe aren't quite as good, whether that's technically or otherwise, but they have that extra bit of heart and the desire and the drive that you can get, like, you know, an extra 5% out of someone. I've always said one of the reasons that I always sort of maintain Sir Alex Ferguson as the top manager is how he could get the extra out of those types of players. Like, if you look through Man United's winning teams, it's always full of players, whether they're playing all the time or just coming off the bench and performing, putting in shifts when needed or filling in when there's injuries. You've always got those players that they're not the glamorous players, they're not the great players, but they would always give that little extra that sort of kept them almost at the same level as their sort of maybe more illustrious counterparts. And I think that's something that's definitely could be useful for Rangers. Do you think, Ryan, you know, for example, if I was to mention Connor Barron this season, you know, he came in and there was a real massive swell behind him when he first came in because he felt like the player that a lot of people felt the team was missing, in terms of he had a bit more blood and thunder about him. He was all energy, all effort. But then as the season went on, he kind of drifted away as some of the players around him kind of picked up. But, you know, is he a player that I think he's still a player that can play a big part in an overall Rangers winning squad. Would you agree with that, or do you think is he a good player that people are underestimating? Is he not as good as we thought, or, you know, do you think he's got a part to play moving forward?
He's definitely got a part to play moving forward. You know, at the start of the season, you know, the wee man was one of the first names in the team sheet. If you actually give the Player of the Year award after 10 games, they probably gave it to him. The wee man was fantastic. Although Raskin's actually got the Player of the Year award, it's probably based on the last kind of 4 or 5 months of Raskin, rather if you actually took the season as a whole. So the wee man's done himself no harm. I've been quite vocal on what I've been saying about the need to actually bolster the squad. I've got a list of 15 names that I want to see out the building. And it includes players that are out on loan, the guys who were touching on earlier on, your Davies, your Dowells, Matondos of this world, that just have to be basically removed from our club as soon as possible. Their agents need to be very motivated to get these guys out of the building. But whatever we do, we need to basically sign double. You know, if we sell 10 guys, we need to sign 20. If we sell 15, possibly 25 need to come in, because there's a 70-game season now. If you actually include the internationals that our players will hopefully be involved in, an individual player, if he plays every game for his club, including cup games, and we make it to the League Cup final and the Scottish Cup final, you're looking at a 70-game season. Our guys, as we know, with their injury record, cannot do that. There's guys that can't even play 2 games in a week that are currently on payroll with us at the moment. So we need to seriously bolster our squad. And Connor Barron is very much part of that. That he might, if we're lucky enough that we get to the Champions League and we get to go to places like the Bernabeu, the Nou Camp, the Parc, all these wonderful stadiums that we want to go and see our team perform in. You might not see Connor Barron there, but see when we actually come back and get a game at the weekend and we've got Dundee United at home, Connor Barron could play in that game. Absolutely no problem at all. I think Scotty had mentioned Lawrence Shankland in the comments earlier on as well. A lot of people have said that ship has sailed. But in the same circumstances that you might not see Shankland going away and starting for us in away games in Europe, but we come home and you stick him up front as our number 9 because our guy's absolutely knackered because he's been running about up front himself all night. Shankland could do a job for us, absolutely no problem at all. And we're going to potentially get him free of charge. He's not going to be looking for the 30 grand a week that the Nail's on that he's not earning. He's not going to be looking for the 25 grand a week that Dessers is on when he's missing open goals against St Mirren at the weekend. He's going to be coming along looking for a fair wage for a professional footballer. And he's going to come and he's going to give 150% every time he pulls on a blue jersey. So there's loads of guys out there that could do that, and Connor Barron is in the building. He's one of them.
Okay, coming to you, Stevie, on the point there, Ryan's segued us perfectly. into the commenters' questions. I've got a handful of questions from the guys in the chat, so keep them coming in, guys. I'll keep adding them to the list. And indeed, one of them was on Lawrence Shankland, which was Scotty's one about on a free transfer. I feel like the narrative around Shankland has changed ever so slightly as time has gone on. We're now looking at him, as I say, a potentially free signing. He's obviously another year older. This season, he's not performed to the level of the previous 2 seasons that had gotten people into the kind of fervour to sign him in the first place. And it seems like the narrative's changed, that people are saying, well, we should bring him in, A, because he's Scottish, which was always a positive of the deal. Whereas before, I think folk were looking at him as he should come in because he'll win us the title. Sort of difference maker. Whereas now I'm seeing more and more people kind of say, well, bring him in because he could still be the second or third striker and do a job, perform. He's not got a terrible injury record. As Ryan says there, you could have him coming into the team post European games and things like that. Where do you kind of stand on the Shankland debate now?
Yeah, I'd go and pick up the round round to Ibrox. I've always been consistent. I want him at Rangers. And as far as what I know of him, he's not coming to Ibrox to sit on the bench. He's coming to Ibrox to be the best, like number 9 he could be, because he's got a great attitude. He's a captain at Hearts. I cut my wee bit of slack this season. Hearts have been dreadful. 2 managers. The second appointment, Critchley, I've never understood that. And he's away now. So a lot of kind of upheaval. Plus, he was at the Euros last summer. A lot of players who were involved last summer, they've not had a good season. So there's a lot of different factors there. But yeah, to me, I really hope to see him in Royal Blue starting next season, because he's a cracking free transfer. No fee, just get him in the door, decent wage, Scottish, really good influence in the dressing room as well. I don't see why we wouldn't sign him. To me, it makes absolute perfect sense for him to come to Rangers. If he starts, he starts. Like I say, I think he'll take his chance. Just what we need, is Ryan rightly pointed out, Danilo, Dessers. I'd give them 2 to Hearts and take Shankland. It's just, it's much better finisher.
And Dino, you talked in your previous answer there about obviously players having that kind of that heart, that little extra, and that kind of dimension. Obviously, Shankland's a well-known Rangers fan, so he's guaranteed, if nothing else, I would imagine, to be coming in and giving 100% to understanding, the ethos of the club in that way. Do you think that's something important that he would bring? He's obviously he's a captain at Hearts, so he brings leadership, which a lot of people think we need more of as well. Do you think that these sort of tertiary qualities are things that he can bring that we really need?
Aye, nothing needs drilled into him. Nothing needs explained to him. You don't need to. He doesn't to sit and watch videos of years gone by, things like that. He knows what it's all about, so that ticks a massive box. And going on about leaders in the team, one of the best stories I've ever heard was the leadership qualities that Dado Purcell brought when he came in. He just took on Rangers and knew instantly what Rangers were all about, and was one of the driving forces that kept the players going all through the season when the times were hard, when it wasn't looking like we were going to get there. He kept everybody going and things like that. And I've just got Shankland in my head replicating that, and that's something that we badly need. We want players to get you over the line. We also want players to put you in your place when you need put in your place. And Shankland is a captain at Hearts for that being one of the reasons. So it's a no-brainer. Similar ages to Billy Dodds. Billy Dodds came in there, obviously what the guys just said about Shankland coming in to get the number 9 spot, but Billy Dodds came in with that same mentality and played his part, and that was needed. It was, if looking back, it was an astute signing by Dick Advocaat, and he scored some great goals. And Shankland, with the many chances that we get, irrespective of what's happened the last couple of years at Hearts, he would bang the goals in with the chances that, if he even got half the chances that Dessers gets, he'd scored double the amount of goals than Dessers. Ken what I mean? So, aye, he's got those qualities that we're badly lacking.
Yeah, I think you make an excellent point there about players coming in and adding. Like Billy Dodds wasn't necessarily the best player in that team, nor did he play the most, but he always contributed. And he scored goals what was needed. And I think that's something else that we don't often think about when we're talking about signings. Like Ryan said earlier, we're going to have to potentially sign a huge amount of players to get the team where it needs to be. And not all of those players need to be first team nail on type players. Some of them are going to be the ones that are not quite as good, but will contribute. And I think like Ryan said, we've got far too many players that either don't or can't contribute because they're on the treatment table. And if you replaced all of them with a Billy Dodds type, you'd do well. You got something you want to add there, Stevie?
Really quickly, mate, what you're talking about is competition. That's what
Yep.
Rangers need in the squad. Be far more competitive, and then they can be more competitive in the league. That's absolutely what Rangers need.
Absolutely. Okay, go on to our next question we've got here from the commenters. So D-Max coming in. One of the first things he'd like to see the new owners do is take out the screens on the daft screens, as he calls them, from the stadium, and wonders how long it will be before they start seriously looking at stadium expansion. So I'll come back to you, Dino. We'll go the other way around this time. They have come out in the fans forum and said that they're not going to immediately be doing anything infrastructure-wise. Because that was something that was rumored to be one of the things they were going to be looking at early, but they've sort of said the opposite of that. And they've also said that the sports bar is as it is on hold because of the finances not quite balancing out. Assuming obviously the number one mission manager, number two mission team, how long do you think before they'll start looking at then the kind of infrastructure stuff, and how long do you want it to be as well in terms of how long we have to wait to see these things starting to improve?
Well, they're not going to take on a club that's got a 50,000 stadium capacity to then have stadium closures to then go and play at Hampden just to improve the stadium right away. They're going to want to have the team performing on the park and winning. So, and in the background, I think it would be, correct me if I'm wrong, but it would be an ongoing discussion about the different possibilities of expanding the stadium. And I mean, the screens, I think, is a no-brainer. But you might see that happening next pre-season. That they're going to want to come in and leave things as they are at the moment to then concentrate on winning on the park. And stadium expansion will be further on down the line. I'm convinced that they will want to do that. And you're potentially looking at the three stands being closed down and it taking a prolonged period of time, and Hampden possibly being our home for a 12 to 18 months whilst that happens. So that's probably something that there's going to take a lot of planning permission for. They're going to have to be in agreement to the SFA to play at Hampden, things like that. So these types of things don't happen overnight. But I think what they're going to be wanting is to get Rangers being successful again on the park, and that being the one and only priority in obviously this same short period of time.
Absolutely, Stevie Dino makes a great point there about the best time to be making a move like that is when the team's playing well, performing, winning things, feeling confident. We saw the impact it had on not just the team, but I feel like the club as a whole, the fans being out of Ibrox at the start of this season. There was already a kind of a dull feeling at the time, and that just kind of compiled on top of it. I think was what kicked off a really kind of poisonous period of time for a month or two until things picked up again. For you, how long do you want them to wait to look at that kind of thing? And do you think it should be caveated on we're not going to look at that until the team's winning? Or is that something that you think can contribute to that goal?
Yeah, I think a couple of years maybe. It's definitely prioritise, getting the team competitive, winning trophies. That's got to be the number one goal, because ultimately Rangers are successful, they'll make more money. Get the Champions League, that's got to be their end game. But at the same time, an extra 10,000 seats into Ibrox, that's what, £6 million in season ticket money. Because right now Celtic got 10,000 more season tickets and that's £6 million. So straight off the bat, that's a big starting point. So yeah, it's something that we can look at definitely. I would love to see another 10,000 into Ibrox. Obviously, logistics, like you're saying there about going back to Hampden, honestly, that made me shudder. I was like, no, just the thought it's great. But like you say, if the team are doing really well, it kind of softens the blow. But yes, I expect timeline-wise, a couple of years going to make sense for me.
And Ryan, if I put to you, there's kind of two ways that I think they can look at expanding Ibrox. So there's the kind of existing plans that date back to our previous CEO that talked about, we had the updates that we've just done, and then doing sort of similar small updates to the other two stands, and then there was the potential idea of also lowering the pitch. So you can go about it that way and potentially do smaller bits, which potentially could be fitted in between seasons, or maybe in a similar thing, just a couple of weeks at the end of a season or a start of a season. Should we be looking to do you think like something like that in smaller chunks, or would you like to see them be more ambitious and potentially even saying, right, we're going to be at Hampden for a year, 2 years, well, maybe not 2 years, that'd be a bit much, but be at Hampden for a year, and then maybe they knock down an entire stand and rebuild it, somewhere in between. What would your kind of thoughts be on that?
So I know a wee bit about this. I've read into this. I know a bit about it. So the option to lower the park isn't really one there, because if we lower the park any more than what it is just now, we're going to need to change the undersoil heating, which is going to cost us an absolute fortune. It's going to basically mean we're going to need to move to Hampden for a season to do it. So that's a bad option. I'm not convinced there's actually a need for an increased capacity at this moment in time. And I would ask you to look around the stadium at the Aberdeen game and look around the stadium at the Dundee United game before we actually expand it. I don't think there's going to be a great attendance at those two games. What we need is a successful team on the park so that the stadium will be filled every single week. If we're going to put an extra 10,000 seats in the stadium, we need to make sure there's another 10,000 bodies showing up every single week to justify the work that we're going to do and the outlay we're going to make to do that. The screens were put in the mid-90s, and the reason they were put in was Davy Murray wanted to make Rangers a UEFA A level stadium, and to basically so the Rangers would be eligible for Champions League finals, UEFA Cup finals as they were at the time, and hosting more kind of like internationals. We would be eligible to host things if the Euros or the World Cup ever came to the UK. We'd be eligible to actually host it. But we were required, as part of that, we had to have screens in our stadium to do it. Subsequently, since then, UEFA have moved the goalposts on us, and we're no longer an A-class stadium, we're a B-class stadium, because we can't, apparently the way things are, we can't have an outer perimeter round the outside of our stadium. So to be an A-class stadium, you need to have a 2-level entry system. So of the guys here that were lucky enough to get to the Europa League final in Seville in 2022, you'll know that as you approach the stadium, your ticket was on your phone, and it activated as you went through a Bluetooth barrier, and then you got to the turnstile, and you didn't get access to the turnstile unless you went through the first gate. And it was further reinforced that they had to do that based on what happened in the England-Italy game, where obviously about 6,000 England fans jumped the barrier and get into the stadium. So that's why those screens are there. There was a company that were commissioned to actually investigate the removal of the screens and see if we could fill it in. I'm actually led to believe that we can't do it. The way that they've been input, we actually have to take the whole corner back out and put it back in again. So you're losing your Gordon Ramsay restaurant and the hospitality suite that's in there. You're losing the away end as it is just now, plus also Broxy's Den, which is the quiet part of the stadium for the kids who've got additional support needs. So they've got a quiet sensory part. So you're losing that potentially for a season as well whilst that gets put back in. So I don't see it. There's things that need to be done. The Copeland Road needs to be finished for a start. There's areas in the main stand that are looking a bit tired. The club deck where I sit is really tired. There's all sorts of parts of the stadium that we need to prioritise on before the capacity of it. Get that sorted. Get a winning team on the park. See what the season ticket waiting list looks like, and then go for it. The cantilevers that we've done, do that again, but do a better job this time, for Christ's sake. Don't have us going to Hampden so we could pop to the Champions League to Dynamo Kiev again. There's all sorts of ways we can do it. Minor things, baby steps, but the priority has to be the team, the squad, the playing squad, and turning the tide and getting a winning team. That has to be the priority over everything else. I don't care I'll sit in the street if I have to. the priority is Rangers need to be winning again. I don't care about stadium capacity.
So I think it's a unified message there, I think, guys. Okay, moving on to the next one. I've got a question in from Gordon. So I'll start with you, Stevie, on this one. Gordon, I say a simple question, maybe not so simple, but a nice short one. How would you like to see us set up next season? We've obviously been largely wedded to this sort of 4-2-3-1 formation for most of Clement's era. Barry's played a lot of that as well, although he's played a bit of the five at the back. Do you want us to continue with this, but just with better players, or do you think there's better systems out there?
I'd definitely be a bit more flexible. But whoever we're signing, I want us to sign big, hard. I'm not going to say the word, but like big guys who can like really, put a shift in and bully your opposition. Because for too long, Rangers getting bullied in Scotland. Like great Rangers teams are always like solid. I'm not talking about being dirty. I'm just talking about being really competitive. Something I was thinking about earlier is like some of the success we have had recently. Scandinavian players like Hollander. I know he got injured a lot, but he's a cracking player. Camara, Morelos, these guys came from like Scandinavia, similar climate, really like physical, decent technical abilities, and adapt to Scotland really quickly. I'd maybe like to see us signing some of those type players. But regarding the system, we kind of covered it already. I'm not that fussed for the style. I just want to see Rangers winning, going like 9-10 game runs where we're winning like every single week, because that just breeds so much confidence, and then you can build your style upon that. Get that like foundation in first, and then you can grow from there. That's the most important thing. But I know he's not exactly done really well, Barry Ferguson, a couple of great wins, but I like the fact that he's changed it up like mid-game, like in-game management. I think that's key. Obviously, you want to get your system that's going to work right away, but if it's not working, like be brave enough to go there and change it. Like have a plan B, have a plan C. But ultimately, it's the quality of player you've got. That's what's going to like win and lose your games. That's the reason we've not been competitive, because everybody last summer was like, oh, this is a rebuild. And it was never a rebuild. It was just cost cutting, and we had to just deal with what was left. Whereas this is an actual rebuild. I expect to see a decent bit of business getting done in the summer. I'm not talking about like Advocat spending £7 million on a player every other day, but smart business, like good players. Still got a few loans, you never know. But I think there's like a seismic change coming at Ibrox in the summer. Across all levels of the club, which to me is only a good thing, because we've kind of been just treading water for too long, whereas I think now there's a structure in place, or it's coming, and it's going to like really take off for us.
Absolutely. Coming to you, Dino. Steve touched on being flexible there and in-game management. I think for me, Giovanni Van Bronckhorst's in-game management was what got us to the Europa League final, and being able to be flexible and adapt to what oppositions were doing, and in particular the dropping of Lundstram into a back three when off the ball was extremely successful. Obviously, we've already touched on, you've said yourself, the winning is the number one thing. So we'll put that aside just for the moment, because ultimately it doesn't matter how we play. Winning is number one. But what kind of things, if not like specific tactics like 3-4-4 or whatever, is there any just particular styles that you'd like to see from the team in the future?
Aye, I'd love to see a 4-4-2, Hateley and Coisty partnership up front. I'd settle for that all day long, mate.
I think we'd all like to see Hateley come back.
But to be honest with you, I'd love to see us actually play football, but maybe not be as robotic, because you didn't need to be as robotic in Scottish football. Whoever comes in, it's a unique league to play in, probably one of the most unique leagues to play in the world, because 10 games, 10 teams, there's they park the bus, and one team you can play like you play in Europe. That's basically, so you need two sets of tactics, two sets of formation, and they just have to work. Simple as that. I'm no fussed if it's 3-4-3, 3-5-2, 4-3-2-1, whatever. I'm genuinely not fussed at all. As long as you say, the manager can adapt, the manager can change things. Does it let his ego get the best of him and his arrogance get the better of him, and be intelligent enough and savvy enough to know when to change, and obviously in personnel who to change as well, like making teams that have got players on the bench that come in and they're a different type of player and they change the game. That's something that's maybe so basic, but we've been starved of that at Rangers. So we need somebody that's going to be able to come in and see, actually, that if I put him in, he's going to be able to do this, and we're going to be able to change it and win. Like that in game management. Van Bronckhorst, as you said, as you alluded to, had that Europeans, but he didn't have it domestically, unfortunately, which was quite sad for a lot of us, wasn't it? But I think going forward, the next manager has to be able to just to be able to not dig his heels in and double down when his way's not working. Simple as that. You've got to think. I mean, the way that we play against teams, there's like, it's ridiculous how defensive teams are against us, and you've got to realise that that's a large percentage of our football is playing that type of football. So it might sound easy to us, but the manager's got to be able to do that.
I'd like a blend of like Gio and Gerrard. I think Gerrard's team was super fit. Like the team that got to Seville, that was Gerrard's pre-season. They put so much work in. And Gio really took it on. But that's the kind of balance you need. You need both. A guy there in the comments, I missed the name, he said that a 4-3-2-1 works with two wingers as long as your striker is doing better than one conversion every 12 chances, and he's spot on. If you've got a striker who's putting the ball in the net, half the time, or is getting 1 and 2, then yeah, you can blow teams away. But that's again coming back to the quality. We need a better quality.
Absolutely, and I think it also ties into the injury issue, because we haven't had a proper left winger for a long time. Who's been consistent and performing or available, which means that all your attack goes down your one side, which makes you more one-dimensional, easier to play against, etc., etc. So yeah, I think you can. It's so easy to tie all of these issues together, and hopefully, as I see, these are the things that we'll start to see fixed. So finally, if I bring the question to you, Ryan, as I said, touched on earlier, the one thing that really upsets me is how slow we often are domestically. So the thing I want to see next season, more than tactics or setup or anything else, is just a quick team that play faster football, are more explosive on the turnover and on the break. Those are the things I would really like to see. What would be number one on your list?
Yeah, definitely for me, I want to see a team that's got a lot of goals in them. If we lose a goal a game, we're not keeping the clean sheets that were mentioned, they're fine. But see, as long as we're scoring 4 and 5 each game, we don't need to worry about it. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you win the football match because you scored more goals than your opposition. And it'd be nice to keep clean sheets along the way, and obviously it'd be great for confidence and goalkeepers and all this kind of stuff. But ultimately, I want to see a team that's scoring a lot more goals and converting these chances there. If our statistic is 1 in 12 chances, that's absolutely disgraceful, to be honest. That's awful for professional footballers. As far as what Gordon was asking there, that I'm seeing various teams around top level Europe that are lined up in a 3-4-3 formation, which could be something that we've not really seen in Scotland, not that I've noticed anyway. We don't really need to be worrying about having massive amounts of defenders. If we've got a decent 4 across the midfield, a versatile 4 who have got goals in them as well, and we've got 3 attack-minded players, maybe one's a target man with 2 false 9s. So there's plenty of options there, and a 3-4-3 something that I would like to see trialled, maybe depending on the manager. I think Marco Rose, his is 4-2-2-2, which seems a bit mental to me, but there's options in there. I want to see something different. 4-2-3-1, I'm fed up with it. It's 5 years ago, it's old now. 4-3-3, we've seen it with Gerrard. Liverpool still play it. Obviously just won the league last season, so there's loads of options there. I want to look forward to going back to Ibrox, and I want to go there with a feeling of dread when the team's coming out. When I'm getting up and I'm singing Simply the Best, I actually want to sit in my heart and actually truly believe that we are simply the best, rather than standing up and shouting I'm simply depressed. So let's hope for the best.
for the best. Yeah, that works as well. I like it. Okay, I'll stick with you, Ryan, for the next one. Coming from Mark, the chat here. He's asking us whether we would take Nathan Patterson back on loan. And he kind of, I'll add in there, would you like to see Lennon Miller? I think that's an obvious yes for most people, though. But yeah, so Nathan Patterson, what's your thoughts on him, Ryan?
Yeah, we're going to need another right back. I think it's quite obvious that Tavernier's reaching the end of his career. Everyone's talking about playing with pace, and I just mentioned a 3-4-3, which I wouldn't see Tavernier being part of that setup unless he was the right hand side of the back three, which he's been doing okay at, in his fairness. Lennon Miller, I think we need to learn the lessons of Lewis Ferguson and letting good young Scottish talent escape out the country. So I think we, if the possibility we do sell Raskin, which I think there's a good possibility given the fact he's broke out the national team. I think we're going to do really well to keep hold of Nico for the summer. Lennon Miller's a pretty obvious replacement to get him in. Lyle Cameron's obviously on his way as well. We've got to be mindful of that. So there's another centre midfielder, a talented boy, who's had a great season for Dundee. So I'd be surprised if we got Patterson back on loan. I think he'll be looking for a crack at the Premiership this season, given the fact he's obviously had a tough time with injury. Fell out with Dice. They've got a new manager now. I think he'll be quite keen. New stadium this year as well, to stay down south and have a go at Everton. But Lennon Miller thinks, it's possible to do that. I don't see where £4 and £5 million comes from a Motherwell player. I think they're getting a bit ambitious and excited. We can load that with incentives so it maybe reaches £5 million in the future, but I don't see us laying out £5 million up front for a Motherwell player.
Okay, what about yourself, Stevie? Where are you sitting on Nathan Patterson and Lennon Miller?
Miller, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. You have to think about that one. He's Dino's called it before. He says a generational talent, and I think he's a brilliant player. Knows the league, very hungry. Really good comparison with Lewis Ferguson there for Ryan as well. Just somebody that slipped through the net. He'd be a great signing. Patterson, I kind of liked him more before he left. I don't think he's really developed as much. I know he's been very injury prone, which is unfortunate for him. But I tend to agree. I think he want to stay in the Premier League in England. Great platform to play at Everton. David Moyes is a brilliant manager. New stadium. Kind of a lot makes sense for him to stay where he is. But if you've got the chance to get him, then yeah, he's obviously got quality. Another international, so I wouldn't say no to him. But it's no one I can see happening, unfortunately.
And Dino, obviously, the boys have both touched on the fact that Patterson's had a couple of injuries while he's been down south. Does that worry you in terms of, obviously, injury-prone players are such a big issue at the club? Is that something that makes you maybe want to steer clear of Patterson, or would you still welcome him back in some capacity?
I want us to get away from signing players with injury histories like that. Patterson obviously ticks a lot of boxes. And absolutely brilliant player when he's fitting on his game. There's no very many better than him in my opinion. He's a fantastic right back, but just gives me the absolute fear. Coming back, plays 2 games for Rangers and he's out for 3 months type thing. That just it just rings alarm bells in my head. And I think if we're going to be signing loan players, we have to be, there has to be a remit that they're actually going to be able to play or be available for 70%, at least 70% of the season, probably even more. And I don't think Patterson would be available for that. He would be a big mass unit. There would be a cost to it, and also perhaps percentage of his wages that we would have to pay, and probably wouldn't get a very good return on investment for him, in my opinion. And I think there's maybe other players that we could look at that have perhaps got a better injury record than him.
Absolutely, definitely something to take into consideration. I think, as you say, love the lad. I think it would be great to see him playing in the shirt again, but there is that slight worry, and I think as Stevie also said, there's potentially some more practical and financial reasons.
Quickly, just on, sorry, Doug, just quickly on what Stevie said. I mean, he's probably got one of the best managers there to actually help him progress to that next level that we all know he's capable of, and Davy Moyes. And then to come up the road and have to come back and then you're on loan and things like that, it's probably not the best move for his career. Probably the best move is for him staying there and being under the management of a very, very good manager. David Moyes has got a fantastic record for, developing players, and I think it would be really beneficial for Patterson's career.
Absolutely.
I think coming in that, guys, I think as well we're actually probably still due a few quid for that, based on appearances or something. There'll still be incentives that we've got to achieve within that deal. And I'd imagine we'll have a decent percentage of sell-on as well, at least 10%. So, really we don't want them back up the road. We want them down there doing well so that we get the last bit of money out of them that we can get, and obviously get a right good dump of money for whoever he moves on to in the future. So come back to us, we'll probably stifle that, and we don't want that. We want our dosh.
I think on that kind of point as well, we can argue the best thing for the club overall is him going and doing amazingly well, because then when we're looking at other signings of young players, we can go, well, look at what he's gone on to do. You could do the same, and I think that's something that unfortunately them across the road have got. Players like Van Dijk that they can point to in terms of, well, look how well he went on and did, and we were a part of that. So we need to get more players in that kind of position as well. Okay, so we're starting to get towards the end of the show, but I've got one sort of more topic that I felt would be remiss of us to not at least touch upon with an Old Firm coming up at the weekend. We're in this weird spot right now where the league's been gone as we came into the split, thusly making the games pretty much worthless to us, and pretty much every Rangers fan just wants to get to the end of the season, the start of the takeover and the new era. But obviously, no Old Firm is truly meaningless, and so going into this game, ironically enough, I think a lot of people are saying that they expect the team to probably play well, and then lose the last two games of the season, or struggle, because that's what this team seems to do. Do you, Ryan, think that we're going to get another example of how this team is so sort of Jekyll and Hyde? Are you expecting it to be a good game? Are you expecting us to play well? And do you think we can come out with what would be, I think, a third Old Firm victory in a row, and thusly give us at least something to kind of end the season on a positive note?
Wouldn't surprise me at all. The mentality of this current crop of players that are in the building just now is nothing short of a joke, to be honest. The fact that they can go away to places like Fenerbahce and turn Jose Mourinho's team over, and then play so well in Europe in so many different occasions this season, but then drop points to St Mirren and Motherwell at home. I think that's the third time this season that they're, which is nothing short of, it's borderline unprofessional from their point of view. There'll be certain players out there that'll be looking to play for a move because they'll realise there'll be quite a few cameras in the stadium. Plenty of agents obviously watching, so they'll be playing for working their ticket out the door, I've no doubt. But equally saying that, it wouldn't surprise me if we get stuffed as well, because we're coming up against, unfortunately, the champions of the country, and we've handed that to them in a silver platter, and they'll be coming up with their heads held high and a wee bit of swagger about themselves, and it's up to us to try and knock that away from them. But it wouldn't surprise me if we lost an early goal and then just folded like a red hot Mars bar.
Absolutely. And what about yourself, Stevie? What are you expecting from the game at the weekend?
Kind of similar to Ryan, to be fair. Pressure's off them entirely, and they can just come and enjoy it. Obviously, fans are back in the stadium as well, so there is that element. But you'd hope, like you said, that there's no meaningless Old Firm games. Even though the league's gone, it's like you still want to stuff them. You still want to go out there and get the win, because ultimately it'll be 3 wins in the spin, which juxtapositioned with like the other games that we've mentioned there, it's pretty dreadful. But at the same time, it does give you something to kind of build on for next season. They've got that in the bank. They've went to Parkhead and won, beat them again at Ibrox. Yeah, it would be really good. I want it for Barry as well. He's kind of been on the hide to nothing, taking the job on. So I'd like him to get 2 victories against them. It's Fenerbahce result, and he'll leave Rangers. He might stay. You never know. He might be in the coaching staff. But for him, I'd love to see Rangers win just for him.
Absolutely. And finally, come to you. Do you know, if we are to play well and we are to potentially get the victory, who do you think the the key players will be in the game?
I mean,
VAR.
Well, yes, I did consider asking about the referees
Nick-
team
Nick
that's set up,
Nick
but I thought
Walsh.
that might cause battles.
Well, for ourselves, if Jenny plays and Niggerman plays up top and Raskan, I think that'll be the 3 game winners for us. If they all play and Bill Figgerman plays up top on his own.
Do you expect Kelly to keep his place?
Aye.
Cool. Okie doke. Well, that brings us to exactly to the hour. Perfect timing, Dino. Just remains for me to thank everyone for tuning in. I'll just go and just thank the panelists as well. Thanks, Ryan, for joining us tonight.
No problem. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Yeah, and thank you to you, Stevie.
Always a pleasure, mate. Thanks for having me on.
And thank you to Dino.
Thanks, mate. Pleasure and privilege as always, lads.
Okay, so thanks again to the guys watching. All your questions and comments that you've put in. There's some good chat going on there as well. All it remains for me is to thank as well our sponsor, Off to the Match I Go. You can go to their website for bespoke footballing items. And right now you can get 10% off all products with the promo code Journal10, which you can see scrolling across the bottom of the screen right now. And that's at offtothematchigo.co.uk, or you can jump straight there by scanning the QR code in the corner. We've got more stuff coming for you. The remainder of the week, we'll have a Rangers Journal, Rangers News show tomorrow afternoon. That usually drops around about 12. It can alter slightly depending on availability, but usually in the afternoon there. And we will have pre and post-match content for the match of the weekend as well. So do tune into that. You can get notifications for all our content when it goes live by subscribing and clicking the little bell icon. And do please give us a like to help to tell the algorithm that you've enjoyed watching and that you'd like us to be spread to everyone else as well. It just remains for me to say thanks to all the guys, thanks to you, and just remember that every night is a Rangers Journal night.